Joining us now is Margaret Brennan, moderator of Face the Nation. Margaret, good to see you. So it is the Trump White House versus the press again. The White House press secretary not able or willing to say the press is not the enemy of the people, even after the president's daughter publicly said she disagreed with that sentiment. Will this rift have any impact on the White House going into the midterm elections, or will his base continue to believe the unfavorable news is fake news?
Well, this is always, I think, an uncomfortable story as journalists to cover for many reasons. One of them, which is we shouldn't be the story. The other is that, this is something that I think comes up constantly because of what is often useful rhetoric and often a reflection of where we are in terms of partisan conversation these days. It's hard for people to sit and listen without putting a political filter on just about anything right now. It's a really unfortunate thing. And I think from the president's rallies, which he will have a third one this Saturday night, we'll listen. Does he use that term again? Is it something that we really should be talking about in terms of a fear of violence, which would be what some, including the New York Times, are raising as a red flag this could incite? Or is this just simply, as the president says, oh, he only means it about fake stories? He's not the first president to have a really contentious relationship with journalists. Everyone back to Thomas Jefferson himself complained about that. But labeling individuals the enemy of the people is a dangerous term that has a lot of heft and meaning when it comes to how others have used it in other dictatorial countries. But on this front, it's something that the president often likes to refer to in rallies because it continues to paint him, the commander-in-chief, as someone who's a victim and being treated unfairly. That kind of theme is something you heard throughout his campaign and something that now he is in many ways campaigning around once again as he tries to help others get elected going into November.
Margaret, I want to ask you about the sort of the juxtaposition of President Trump, who on one hand continues to say that the investigation into Russian meddling in the election is a hoax, and on the other hand, his top national security team standing in the press room at the White House yesterday saying that our democracy is in the crosshairs because of the potential for more Russian meddling. What's going on here?
Well, to be clear, those national security officials, and that was the head of U.S. intelligence to the FBI chief to Homeland Security head, the head of Cyber Command, said this isn't a potential. It's happening right now. In fact, the head of Cyber Command had some very strong words saying President Trump had actually authorized him to take active measures against those who are interfering right now, trying to interfere in those November races. That's pretty significant. And that's a big policy shift. So that hardline policy that on paper is the Trump administration's strategy and approach sometimes doesn't get reflected in the president's own language. This is a divide we talk about quite often. Why isn't the president echoing the words of his advisors? What the White House says is that the president wanted them to go out and give that hardline message and that he also recognizes it's an issue. But the distinction they draw is that he's speaking in past tense when it comes to what, frankly, many Republicans say is his conflation of the fact that there was interference that the U.S. intelligence community found in 2016 with the questions about the validity of the president's own election, and that two things can be true. He won the election and that Russian meddling happened, that they don't have to be competing concepts here, and unfortunately they're often presented as such. That's something that the White House would try to nuance around as well. But the president, when he throws around terms like hoax, makes it sound like he's only looking at this through the political and personal filter and not recognizing the real threat that his national security advisors are saying exists right now.
Margaret Brennan. Margaret, always good to hear from you. Thanks so much.